Welcome back to the Leadership Lab. We have a great one in store today. We are going to talk real estate, we're going to talk business, and we're going to talk the journey of none other than powerhouse female business person, Davelle Morrison. Davelle, thanks for being here with me today.
Thanks so much for having me. That's a great introduction. I'm honored.
Thank you. No, this is good. Let's get into it because I know a lot of people would love to hear your story. They'd love to hear more about kind of real estate and your expertise there. Now, you and I have known each other for a while now. It's been really great, and you've inspired me in business, and so I really wanted to have you and chat with you today. What was your path? Tell people what your path was to get to where you are today.
Sure. I guess it's a little bit of a different path, I suppose. So long time ago, I was born in Guyana, which is in South America for people who don't know. And I moved here when I was 4 years old, came to Toronto with my parents, grew up really in the Thornhill, Markham area. My parents got divorced. And, my mom bought a townhouse in Thornhill, and we sort of lived in I'm going to call it a crappy little townhouse. Because growing up in Thornhill, everybody's parents were married. Everybody had these big houses. And we lived in a tiny little townhouse, and it was a single parent household. So not the norm for Thornhill. So I definitely felt like the poor kid going to school. But what I noticed, because my mother owned the townhouse, after a number of years, she was able to sell that townhouse and buy a bigger house in Markham. And then at some point, she was able to buy a house at Yonge and Eglinton. And so it really showed me the real estate journey in terms of how that can really help increase the value of your household. And so that's certainly something that triggered for me that, hey, you know what? Real estate is a really good thing to invest in from seeing that growing up. I went away to McGill University. I did a Bachelor of Commerce in Management Policy and Finance. Then actually worked for a brokerage firm for a couple of years as a sales assistant. And I started reading an article in the Financial Post about the Toronto International Film Festival and how they went about finding corporate sponsors. And I thought, oh, that sounds like a really cool job. And it was actually more in line with things I had done in my extracurricular activities in high school and university. And I thought, I didn't think people could get paid to do that. So basically, I was persistent with them. And then eventually they had an opening in the development department, and I got a job there. So I spent about 4 years in the fundraising department, and I felt like I had climbed as far as I could go at that company. And I'm always wanting to learn new things and do new things and challenge myself. And so after that, I thought, okay, it's time for me to move on, time to move on to another company. And anyways, found my way eventually to Chorus Entertainment, where I worked for about 10 years in advertising sales, sold sales and sponsorship, like ads and sponsorship for the W Network. So I did that for 10 years. While I was there, I was buying properties, I was acting as a landlord, and I saw the beauty of real estate. But I could also see that every other year they were laying off more sales reps. And I figured, you know what? At some point it's going to be me, and I really need to figure out what is going to be my next career path. So I really kind of started thinking about, am I going to do this? Am I going to do real estate? I decided to shy away from real estate because I didn't like the fact that you were going to have to work evenings and weekends. So what I decided to do was get into the fitness space because I was really interested in fitness. A good friend of mine was a naturopath. My cousin was huge in the fitness space. So we started offering weekend retreats for women. And, we did a couple of those, but I was like, I can't make a living doing this. This isn't really working out. Sometimes you kind of got to read what the universe is trying to deliver to you. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what, this isn't going to be it. But what it taught me was that I was so passionate about what I was doing, I was willing to work evenings and weekends. And so I thought, you know what, that excuse that I'd said to myself before about not doing real estate, it wasn't really valid. Because if it was something I was passionate about doing, I was willing to do it. So I then started working towards getting my real estate license. So it took me about a year to get to the beginning steps of that. And then I knew something had changed with my boss's demeanor towards me. And then it was, right after May long weekend, I knew they were going to be doing layoffs. And she called me into a boardroom. And the Chorus Entertainment space at Queen's Quay has frosted boardrooms and has clear boardrooms. And she'd asked me to meet in a frosted boardroom. So I came to work that morning just kind of knowing like, okay, my time's up. I'm getting the package today. And so that's what happened. And yeah, I got my package on Wednesday, and then Friday I signed my contract with Bosley Real Estate. And I was like, I'm doing this.
Wow, good for you. Good for
Yeah.
you. Now, what was it that gave you the gumption to say, like, so at that first point, I know it was the passion. And it's funny you mentioned that because I had the same thing. So our industry, like I'm in the financial industry, so insurance and investment, and they, you do evenings and you do some weekends and things like that. And I was always at the beginning, nope, not same thing. Like I was intrigued. I was interested, but at the same time, like, I don't see myself doing that. And I remember actually going to a showing for a house, and we were buying our first townhouse, my wife and I. I remember asking the guy, do you like just sitting here all day? It's a sunny Saturday. Do you like doing this? He's like, yeah, I golf on Mondays and Tuesdays. I was like, okay. It's like, it kind of hit there. And, society's had us in this Monday to Friday thing for so long. And yes, we can make weekend plans, but you can do the weekend whenever you want to do the weekend when you're on your own, and you can start to do those things. And if you really want to take a weekend, you could choose to do that if you wanted to. So it's a change of mindset that we've had that's been built up in us for so long that we just think, oh, if it's outside of 9 to 5 on Monday to Friday, like we're sacrificing, where you're really not, you're really investing into it. So yeah, I work on Saturday now. I don't mind it. I love it. And it's completely changed my mindset on things. So yeah, I love to hear you did that. But when you made that change, even when you did that, you got the package, all that stuff. Very similar story to me, by the way. I got a package, and then I was going to stay in the career in corporate, but then I said I'm going to take a shot at it. What were the feelings going on at that time?
Well, I mean, really, one of the reasons why I went towards real estate, so I could have taken that package and gone to work for another broadcaster, or I could have gone towards doing internet sales, internet advertising sales, because that was certainly up and coming and a burgeoning field to get into. But I just kind of thought, you know what? The whole TV landscape is really changing. And if I take one of these other jobs, I feel like I'm going to get laid off eventually anyways. And so that's really what kind of resonated with me. And I also started to think, I need something that I can do into my 80s. As you talk about social norms and working Monday to Friday, the other social norm is that you're going to retire at 60. And no, I'm not. First of all, I couldn't afford to. But then also, I feel like I'd be bored. So I wanted a career that I could do on my own, that I could still keep working well into my 80s. And so that was another reason why real estate was appealing to me. Now, of course, was it a little bit scary, on that Wednesday when I got let go, to be like, texting all my friends and calling people to figure out what I was going to be doing next. And then I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to do real estate. And I think I just felt okay because I had that parachute, that I had been let go. So I had a package. So I didn't really need to earn money for a while. So it was okay for me to try something new, and see where I could get to. And I guess I just kept thinking, this is it. I'm going to do this. And this is the direction that the universe has been putting me in for years, that I just wasn't listening. I remember, well before I got into real estate, just walking to open houses all the time, just because I liked houses and I wanted to go into them. And people would ask me when I was there, oh, are you an agent? No, I'm not an agent. I guess maybe I had that agent look, right? And so that's what I mean by, I'm like, I think the universe just meant this for me, and it was just time to accept it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I'm it's very interesting you said about your career with how long, people talk about retirement as age 60, 65, 55. And in my business, like we're working with people helping to do that. But my parents are 80, 81. I was literally on a meeting last week when I was with them with their lawyer to talk about transition to my nephew. And it's their business. They've had it for, dad jokes now is like 48 years. But it's, they've been able to do that because they had a business. And I get a lot of people even coming to me now after they've retired from a career. And I'm like, why are we talking? Like, what do you, and they're like, Brad, I waited for this day for 30 years. I worked for GM or I worked for whatever it is. And now I've been doing it for 3 months. I've been retired for 3 months, and I'm, like you said, bored in my mind. And I've got more to give. I've got more to do. And I want to be inspired. I want to have purpose. And it's also one of the reasons for me why I want to do my business like that, because it was something I could do for as long as I want to do it. while I still have a lot to give and give others, because I find people kind of exit stage left too quick and then they go down too quickly when they have all their faculties and they're ready to go, right?
Absolutely. And, the other thing that I think people forget is that we're living so long right now. My grandmother passed away a couple of years ago. She was 98. And so if you think about if you're going to stop work at 60 or 65 and you need to fund 30 years of retirement, that's a long time. And so that's one of the other things is like, you got to figure out how to either keep working or how to have some income coming in, because you're going to be funding your lifestyle for a long time.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, it's funny because, and I'll be ostracized for saying this, but in my industry for years and years, the old adage was, people, while you're in they call it your accumulation years, while you're growing your wealth, you're more, they'll say aggressive, but you're more a growth investor. But then when you're approaching retirement, you're getting within 5 years, a lot of the people, the banks, like a lot of the financial institutions, will shift people to more conservative, say bonds, things like that, because it's more to protect the butt of the advisors, really. But if you look at, like you said, the longevity of somebody when they retire at age 65, and if they live to age 90, 95, that's a long time to be living on bonds. It really is. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work. So it's often something that I try and coach my clients on and saying, hey, you know what? In history, the last 100 years, in any 10-year period in history, equities have outpaced bonds. So, you need to be able to do that type of stuff, like getting a little bit more technical with it. But that's very a much different thing where people have that mindset. And income is a big thing. New income is something that can bring in new money and new flows is huge. Yeah, I agree with that. One thing you mentioned earlier that really intrigued me, where you said, I just kind of did it. And it made it sound like, I just made a decision and I put the blinders on. I know when I started this, I had many offers. Like people said, come, like 2 days later, they're like, come do the same job with my company, come do the same job with my company. And I'm like, no, I'm going to take some time. I've worked for 17 years and I really wanted to do this, but I was afraid to make the jump right away. And then I did do the jump, but I still took every lunch and I took I had conversations with people, kept doors open, and I had one foot out the door to be able to say, if I need it and if I need to go, I've got this backup plan. Where it really shifted for me is when I always say I burned the boats, and I said, I'm not taking any of these calls. I'm not taking lunches. I'm not going to this dinner anymore to listen to their opportunity. I'm doing this, or I'm going to die trying. And that's where everything kind of changed for me. What would you say for you was something that, or if you could give that to somebody else, in your experience when you were starting this and doing that, what would you say would be a great thing that you could give to other people on the importance of focus and commitment?
Well, for me, I read a lot of books. I listened to a lot of audiobooks. So although people were saying, oh, you could go work here or could go work there, I just didn't even entertain them. I didn't even follow up. I didn't even take those meetings. There's this book that I had read. It's called Dare to Succeed by Mark Burnett. He's the guy that did Survivor. And he did, I forgot the name of the show, but before Survivor, he did a show where it was basically they were doing these races in Bora Bora, these like survival type races. And, one of the things he said in his book is he said, had you explained to me everything I needed to do or know before I pitched Survivor, it would have scared me off and I wouldn't have done it. But because he just jumped right in and just did it, he didn't think about those things. He just kept going. And so I think sometimes you can be stuck in, as I like to say to people who are contemplating real estate investing, you could get stuck in analysis paralysis, or you could just do it. And so sometimes you need to just do it. Obviously, you don't just go jump off a building. You do have to do some research. But for the most part, sometimes I think people overanalyze and they do too much research, so they get scared away from doing something. And I think you really have to look at all the people who are doing something that maybe they didn't know or weren't aware of before, and how well they've done, to say, you know what, these people inspire me. Don't look at the people that don't inspire you. Just focus over here with the white light, where the people who are inspiring you, focus with those people.
Such a great comment. I love that, because I find how many stories have you heard in real estate where people are saying, oh man, I had that opportunity and should have done it. And look at it now. And but I didn't think it was gonna. We weren't unsure. We weren't sure it was gonna work out. The neighborhood wasn't gonna be what we thought. All these things, right? Like you must have countless of those.
So in my 20s, my friend and I walked into the Candy Factory lofts, which are like Queen West West. Back then, it was like you had the Queen Street Mental Institute beside there. There was nothing there. And we're like, this is crazy. Who would buy a place out here? We were in our 20s. We knew nothing. And now, of course, we regret. We're like, we totally should have bought all those lofts that we saw at the Candy Factory because now they're all worth over $1 million.
Yeah.
And to think when we were in our 20s, we were just sitting, pointing our finger and laughing, going, who wants to be here? Now everybody wants to be there.
Everybody wants to be there. It's very similar. I remember we used to have this guys' night when I was in my late 20s when I moved to Toronto. It was Thursday night and we came home, and we went to, there was some after party after the bar we were at, and we got dropped at this in the cab in this this house. It was literally about 5 houses in a row, and there was just mud and nothing else. And I was like, "Where are we? Like what?" And like it was 10 minutes from King West. I was like, "Where are we?" And they go, "This is Liberty Village." I was like, I look around, I'm like, "What? Like Liberty Village?" It was just mud, a bunch of mud and everything, and these 5 townhouses, like if you can imagine. And I'm sure there was more behind. I couldn't see. But then now kind of thinking about it, and I literally said, this is like an island in the middle of nowhere. And now you look at it, it's pretty crazy.
It still is an island in the middle of nowhere. And I used to actually work in Liberty Village because when I worked at Chorus Entertainment, that's where we were located.
Yeah.
So back then, Liberty Village was great. Now it's become so congested that even for the last 5 years, I've been telling buyers, don't buy there. Because, in order for someone to own a place in Liberty Village, to get on that streetcar to go along to King West, if they start at, let's say, University or Bay, let's say they're in the financial district and they need to get home, they're basically going to end up walking because the streetcar for King Street is so full that you can't get home. So I've been telling people for years, don't buy there. And now, if you look at the Liberty Village Facebook groups, they're like over the top because the parking spots at Ontario Place are closed down, the construction on the Gardner, and there's so much traffic going through there that they've filed a petition with the city. Anyways, it's such a nightmare that, that neighborhood could still be, it's a bit of an island.
A bit of an island, yeah. My nephew lived there, and he said, I had to move out because of that as well.
Yeah.
What is something that you think what do you think of the current financial situation in in the financial situation of people in the GTA today? Like, how do you feel about that?
I think a lot of people are struggling. I think that interest rates have gotten really high. I think that for a lot of people, they were on variable rates. They didn't think about locking in before this happened. I'm sure that now after this has happened, it will make people rethink and say, okay, when rates are low, I should lock in for a fixed rate. Obviously, now's not a really good time to get a fixed rate. It's better actually to be variable, as we know the rates are going to be coming down. So, but I think a lot of people are struggling with their mortgage payments because they become so high. And I think a lot of people are stressed out about what happens when they renew, because we know that 20% of the market renews every single year. So I think that you have people who are under a lot of stress to pay their bills. And then when they go grocery shopping and they see that groceries cost so much money, I think it's a huge problem. And I think our society is we've kind of lost our way, right? When you see some of the grocery CEOs and the millions of dollars that they make, I think it's troubling to a lot of people. And listen, I'm a capitalist. I'm all about work hard, make a lot of money. But there's also got to be a line where you can't have a CEO making millions of dollars and having the cashiers in the store use the food bank. And so I think that that's cruel. And I think that, oddly enough, it takes me back to a vacation in Cuba that I took, which is interesting. Anyways, so I remember going to tour a cigar factory in Cuba. So aside from not allowed to take pictures, they basically said, all the employees are paid a certain wage, and then they're also paid in cigars at the end of the week. And so and I hate to bring up this socialist society about something that we should do, but I think that the people who work in grocery stores, give them an hour to walk through and get whatever they need before they go home. Like, just something. It just seems crazy to me that you've got these grocery CEOs making millions and millions of dollars and their employees can't feed themselves. That's just wrong.
Oh, that's a great point. I think that's so true, because I think if you look at many other companies, they all have discounts of, I have a neighbor that works at J&J, and they get to go and pull things in like the product. So you think you'd be able to do that in the grocery world as well. Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. So on that, you were talking about that, but there's some real challenges today with young people, trying to get in the market. I mean, a lot of them are giving up on it. A lot of them think. I'm hearing a lot that I sit with. They're shifting away from home ownership in their minds because they just think it's not possible to them. What would you say to those young people?
Well, I think some of them are getting creative. A lot of them obviously have help from the bank of mom and dad or other family members. And there's certainly, that is a significant present in our marketplace right now, that people are getting family help. But for those who don't have family help, I've noticed they are getting a little bit more creative. So what they're doing is they're renting in the city, and then they're maybe buying in another area outside of the city and renting that property out. And they could be renting that property out on a long-term basis or a short-term basis, but it's giving them the opportunity to own something. And so maybe it's just not in Toronto, but they're going to the less expensive market. So I'm noticing that young people are getting creative. The other things that I suggest to people is just buy with a friend. You don't need to buy by yourself. You could buy a duplex, you and a friend, and one person has one unit and the other person has the other unit. So that way you still have a separate space, but you could combine your incomes, combine your income profile, be able to get a larger mortgage and still be able to get a place in Toronto. So I think that people need to think creatively, but I think people also need to remember, because a lot of times in the media when I hear the stats about, they can't buy a detached house, I'm like, you know what? I don't live in a detached house either. Get over it. There has to be a property ladder, right? You don't show up on your first day of work when you're 20 and say, yeah, I'm CEO now. This is life. We got to work for it, right? There's a property ladder. So I had a condo first, and then I moved to a smaller house, and now I live in a bigger house. And so I think that that's the one piece that people always forget. This is a property ladder. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. This is life. You've got lots of years. Consider buying a place that has some rental income. So even today, my house has a basement apartment in it. And sometimes when I'm taking out clients and I'm like, hey, you might want to consider getting a place with a basement apartment, some people really turn their noses up at that. And for me, for the longest time I was single, I'm on one income. Having that basement apartment actually gives me the second income that I just don't have. And so for a lot of people, these are the creative things that you need to do to get into the market. Is you've got to think, okay, you know what? And at least that way, if I've got a house with a basement apartment, that helps cover my mortgage. That means you can write off any roof repairs that you might need to do. But again, once your mortgage is paid off, you've got this constant stream of income coming in, which goes back to what I'm talking about in retirement. You're retired, you're no longer working. Wouldn't that be great to get some income coming in? And that's a great place to get some income from your basement apartment, especially when rents now are so high. And for most basements out there, you could get between $1,500 to $2,000 a month. That's a huge chunk of change, and that's a huge mortgage helper. So I think that people in Toronto just need to turn their minds a little bit differently, because I've noticed in the Vancouver market, because their houses have been far more expensive than ours for so long, having a mortgage helper, aka the basement apartment in Vancouver, is just a standard. They're just used to it. And so I think people in Toronto have gotten a little too high and mighty, and they just need to wake up to the reality of there's nothing wrong with having someone live in your basement. You literally don't need that space. Like, how much storage do we all need? You just don't.
Yeah, it's so true. I love that concept of the property ladder. I think you're right. I think where people think they are, and there's in what they're in their living arrangements and things like that, they're not willing to compromise to climb that ladder. So on that kind of note as well, with young people today, I'm seeing a lot of young people, young professionals downtown paying those high rents in condos that to me, I just blows my mind. I know rents have increased from when I was doing it, but if you were a young 21-year-old or 23-year-old professional Davelle right now coming into Toronto, what would you do?
Well, I mean, obviously I'd get a job.
Yeah.
But I probably might get a second job as well too. You see a lot of Uber drivers. Every time I jump into an Uber, I always ask the person, so what's your day job? Because I know that they have one. And I think back to when I was in high school, I was a waitress. And I just thought waitressing was good money, and I do see a lot of young people do that, especially oddly enough in the fitness space with the gyms. A lot of the gyms these days are like incredibly expensive. like Barry's Boot Camp, whatever it is, they're like $35 a session. And so what I find a lot of people do this, they actually just work at those fitness places so that they can get a discount when they actually go and do their workout. So I think that, yeah, I would consider, if it was me, I would consider getting a second job so that I could help, afford my wages, my expenses a little bit more. Or I would consider getting a roommate. If you rent a house instead of renting a condo. So let's back up for a second, because renting condos is like the most expensive way to rent. And I'm about to actually do a lease listing for one of my clients, and we're about to charge $2,600 a month for a 1-bedroom condo at the base of the Bayview Extension. But if you would go rent a 2-bedroom house instead, you could get a roommate and not pay that kind of rent. So again, I also think about, there is a cheaper way. You just need to not get sucked into what everybody else is doing, which is renting a condo downtown. How about go slightly out of the city? And I shouldn't say out of the city, but when I say out of the city, I'm like, what about Bathurst and St. Clair? What about Yonge and Eglinton? What about going to some of those areas, rent a house, get a roommate? Done. It's cheaper.
Yeah, that's so huge, because I just look at it myself. People, like friends of mine, did the same thing. Oh, they had their own apartment. Oh, I want my own space. And I was constantly like renting rooms with roommates and in a bigger space. And I paid half, if sometimes a third of the rent they did. And I was able to accumulate more and then get into the market, into my own house quicker than they did, because they were just getting eaten away at rent. So yeah, great point on that. Where do you see the real estate market going in 3 to 5 years?
Up. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, you're a real estate agent. Of course you're going to say that. Now, listen, I've said to people now, it's not a great time to sell. But if you need to sell now for whatever reason, then you know what? It's got to be done. But as long as you buy and sell in the same market, that's not as bad. Then you won't feel the pain. You're going to get a deal on the buy. There's been lots that's been said about the market right now, and that we're in a buyer's market without any buyers. So there's lots of inventory on the market. Condos not selling, houses not selling. So it's a great time for people to buy. And yes, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever you buy is going to be worth more. So it is a good opportunity, so that you're not like me going, the Candy Factory lofts, I should have bought a bunch when they were super cheap, but I didn't do it. But I think that we're always going to be having a conversation about how expensive Toronto real estate is, because it's just not getting any cheaper. And so, right now our average is about 1.1 million, whatever. 10 years from now, I'm sure we'll be talking about, oh my God, it's $2 million. How does anybody afford this? But they do.
Yeah, they'll figure it out, right? They figure it out. Now, and speaking of that, you got into the vacation property market as well, and you kind of diversified there. And I know you have a learning program, and you teach people how to do that. What triggered you to do that, by the way?
Well, I mean, as I said, I've noticed that real estate is a great thing. I've noticed that it can pay me income long after I stop working. So that was a good thing for me. I started out doing a lot of long-term rentals. And after doing my long-term rentals, they're great. I still have a couple of them and I really enjoy them. But I thought, let me get into the short-term rental market, because I could see how I could make a lot of money doing that. So my friends and I, and again, back to your earlier comment about you can't always afford to do stuff on your own. So I pool my money with friends to buy investment properties, because again, I don't have unlimited finances, and it's great to be able to lean on my friends as well. So I got a group of my friends together. We bought a 6-plex in Prince Edward County. It's called the Mary Street Guest House, and we rent that out. We got a short-term rental license, and so that's been amazing. It's a great property, and it offers a vacation spot that we can rent out and make money from, but it also offers us a great spot to go with our friends. Now, in the summer, it's high season, so we never go because we'd rather make money. But it's funny, I'm just planning a little, vacation with my friends over November long weekend when I know it's low season. And I usually try to do this with my friends every year, every other year. And it's kind of cool to be able to invite all of your friends to your 6-plex, where you can have 16 people have their own bedrooms and have a good weekend away. And it hasn't cost them an arm and a leg because, well, other than their food, really, they don't have to pay for it. So it's kind of great, actually, to be able to do that with your friends and family. So then after my experience with Prince Edward County, I thought, geez, if a place in Nowheresville, and I know the county is amazing, but from the grand scheme of things, it's kind of Nowheresville. And so I thought, if a place in Nowheresville could do this well, what could a place in like a real destination do? And so I started looking in Barbados. So I had gone away to Barbados. Oddly enough, it was right before the pandemic. I had engaged with a realtor down there. I started looking at properties, checking things out. Then the pandemic hit. And I thought, oh, okay, no, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm now going to start looking at, properties in vacation areas in Toronto again. And then I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. And then one of my friends who had wanted to invest with me, middle of the pandemic, he's like, you know what? We need to revisit that. That was a good idea. Let's do that. So it was 2021, January, everywhere's still in lockdown. We basically can't fly there. And so, we started engaging with a realtor down there to look at properties. And in between her lockdowns, she would show us what properties were available on her, phone, through a WhatsApp video. And basically that's how we bought our house, through WhatsApp on video. I was very specific about the neighborhood I wanted because I'd been there, so I checked it out. And my friends who were investing with me just trusted that I knew a good neighborhood. And we bought a house. We knew that it needed to be fixed up, but we purchased it in February, closed on it in October, and then went down with a bunch of our friends and a ton of suitcases and a lot of, work tools, and basically started painting the place and getting it ready. And in the middle of a shipping container crisis, we also decided that that would be a really good opportunity to buy all of our furnishings here in Toronto, because that way you can shop at like IKEA, Structube, and furnishings are really expensive in Barbados. So we basically got, a couple of storage lockers here, bought all of our stuff here, got it shipped, like some 18-wheeler truck, took it to Halifax, put it on a ship, and then all of a sudden we're shipping it to Barbados. So one of my partners on his phone, he's like, yeah, check out this app. We can actually see where our boat is and when it's coming into port. So we did that. Now, it was a nightmare with customs, I have to say, all the duty that you have to pay on everything you purchase. But anyways, we got through it. And so then, our furniture shows up and it's just like, okay, rapid fire, let's put together the furniture. Let's bring it all in the house. And it's been amazing. It's a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house with a pool. So it sleeps 6 people. And it's been an awesome journey to own that. There was definitely some bumps along the way getting there, but it's been amazing on Airbnb. In fact, it surprised me because I thought buying a place like that, okay, it'll be popular December through April. It's been popular like year round.
Wow.
And it's also been great to go down with friends and be like, yeah, come to my house. Travel is also expensive right now. And the fact that people only need to cover their airfare, they don't have to pay for their accommodations. And the house is a 3-minute walk from the beach. It's a 2-minute walk to the mall, a ton of restaurants, and the grocery store. So it's nice to be able to buy vacation properties that pay for themselves, that pay you some money, and they're places that you get to enjoy with family and friends.
That sounds amazing. And it sounds like you are everybody's favorite friend because you get to entertain them very nicely and they don't have to pay for it. I love that. What's your favorite YouTube channel, or what's your favorite podcast that you're listening to now?
I don't do a lot of YouTube, but the podcast that I like the most, it's called Tuck, which stands for Toronto Under Construction. Ben Myers is the host, and it's basically an insight. If anyone ever wants a deep dive insight into the pre-construction condo and the developer industry, this is it. This is where you're going to get to know everything what developers are thinking, what their challenges are, what's really going on in the market, why can't they build more? Why is it so expensive? But this is it's called Tuck, and it's a great, really well done podcast. They bring in some really, really interesting guests that are working with all the different development companies. So that's a podcast that I really like. Other than that, I do a lot of audiobooks. So I like listening to a ton of audiobooks just to always get my information of what I like or what's interesting, or just getting some motivation. So yeah, that's been amazing.
That's awesome. And before we wrap up today, like where can they find you, Davelle? Where can they hear more about you?
Yeah, so if they just go on Instagram and type in Davelle Morrison, I'm also on LinkedIn under Davelle Morrison, and those would be the 2 best places to find me.
Awesome. I've enjoyed this. I love to have you. I was really excited to talk with you today. Nobody knows more about real estate than this lady. So definitely reach out. And thank you for doing this today.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Awesome.